How's it going, everyone? My name is Michael SK, and welcome back to Chaos Child. We have decided that we're going to run out into the danger that is now present here at this building. I've already forgotten what this place is called. It's a theater, that I know for fact, to face off against our father. There is still much that we do not know, much that Takuru wants to find out, which is why he came here to further question Serika. Will we get any information out of her going forward? Maybe, but first we gotta deal with this guy, who acted as our father. Honestly, really slipped through a lot of my predictions. I didn't think he'd be the bad guy, but nope, he definitely is. So we have to deal with him and his machine that he apparently is wearing. Or maybe there's something else here, I'm not exactly sure. He does have some interesting garb, that is for sure. The point is that we gotta deal with Big, Bad, and Not So Beautiful before we can really get any more information. Unless he decides to tell us some information beforehand. I'm all okay with that. I took a good look at it. Dad was holding some kind of backpack, and I could see some kind of device inside. Dad was wearing a piece of headgear that connected to it. And the long, cylindrical machine he was holding was connected to it by a cord. If he had psychic powers like we did, then he had to have one too. That is a wicked sword. It kind of looks like a keyblade, actually. Kind of. That was Dad's D-sword. But why did he have it? I thought that those powers only appeared in brains that were still developing during the earthquake.
これまでの研究によれば、脳がまだ発達段階で活発に活動している若い人間。その中でも脳への負荷が非常に高い事象を経験した者だけに能力の発現が見られる。
That's what Kunasato had said.
ああ、これか。
Yeah, that. Dad saw that saw what I was looking at and tapped his backpack with the D-sword.
すげえだろ。俺たちの研究成果の一つさ。俺みたいな普通の人間でもギガロマニアックスと似たような能力が持てる。こいつはある装置の端末でな。その装置ってのは以前ここにあったんだが、ちょっとトラブっちまって。おかげであの地震だ。ひでえ目にあった。
Dad sounded like a child whose favorite toy had been broken. It was clear he didn't care at all about the people who died or whose lives had been ruined during the earthquake.
そのせいで俺らもリストラされちまうしよ。金もね、人もいねえで、組み立て直すのに6年もかかっちまった。委員会のバカども。
So that was how he'd been able to do that to Ito? And how he'd been able to kill Yui? I felt a mix of rage, sorrow, and hate. All the feelings were so strong I wanted to scream.
はい、お前のことを何とかすりゃ、また研究に戻れるからな。
It was as if he was picking just the right words to make me even angrier.
正直、ちょっと焦ったぜ。あの嫌なやつ、一人でここへ来やがったからよ。お前が来なきゃ話にならねえし、めんどくせえことになったと思ってたんだが。
I knew we walked right into a trap. He looked down at her and poked her with the artificial D-sword. She still didn't move. It couldn't be. Was Serika...
ん？死んでるぞ。当然だろう。
Honestly, we shouldn't be surprised. I kinda am, for story's sake, but oh well. So much for that information we were supposed to be gathering. Funny, ain't it, he seemed to say.
思考誘導をかけられて妄想の中で戦わされてるって気づいたんだな、こいつ。最後ディソードを引っ込めてお前に殺される瞬間まで抵抗一つしなかった。どこまでお前のことが大事なんだか。
He kicked her hard enough that she turned over.
やめろ。
それにしてもお前すごかったな。ノノを殺された恨みに取りつかれてるからよ。それをちっとブーストしてやったんだ。そしたら情けも容赦もなくぶっ殺したもんな。お前もどこまでノノが大事なんだか。
I could feel my whole body getting hot. Stop it. Don't say Nono's name. Not with that face. Not with that voice.
何考えてんだよ。
ああ
The way Dad's expression didn't change at all only made me madder. Did he really not understand? We'd all lived together for years, right? We'd come here as a family, hadn't we?
ユウトとウキはいなくなったあんたのことを心配してる。
なんだ、お前まだあいつらに言ってなかったのかよ。
ユイだってずっとあんたを信頼してた。それに
And Nono.
きっかけはタクルのリハビリの手伝いをしていた時に父さんに言われた言葉。独学なのにやるじゃないか、なかなかだぞという一言でした。きっと父親というのはそういうものなんでしょう。父さんが作った家のルール、私は好きでした。ありがとう。
Damn, too bad nobody followed the rule about, you know,
くれぐ
no
れも
keeping secrets.
飲みすぎには注意してください。
信じてたんだ。大切な家族だって。なのに何考えてんだよ。
I love the echo effect. Despite it being pretty weird. But then you gotta remember, we are in a theater. My words echoed off the walls of the theater and came back to me again and again. And then I realized I was the same way. I believed in Dad too, from the bottom of my heart. But he... Dad chuckled and scratched his head, like I'd seen him do many times before. It was the same thing he'd done with Nono, when Nono was scolding him at home.
タクルよ、お前なんか楽しいことってあるか？
は？
なんかあんだろう、面白いと思うこと。それがなきゃ人間なんてやってらんねえだろうが。
What was he talking about? That wasn't what I'd asked.
なんでユイを殺した？ノノを殺した？
ユイをやったのはお前の友達だし、ノノをやったのはこいつだろうがよ。
うるさい！
おお、怖え。
What the hell was so funny? I clenched my hands into fists, my grip so tight in my rage that my nails dug into my skin.
あんたどうしてこんなことできるんだ？おかしいだろ。
何怒るなって。今言ったろ？楽しまなきゃダメだ。
Well, it's kind of hard to when our friends and family are dying. What the hell does that mean, though?
俺はな、お前に期待してたんだよ。人間一人リアルブートしちまうくらいぶっ壊れてたからな。どこまでいけるか、どこまで狂えるか楽しみにしてた。
はあ？
お前みてえなギガロマニアックスが好きなことを好きなだけやるようになったら本当にすげえんだぜ。 この世界すらめちゃくちゃにできちまう。面白い。たまんねえ。それを観測して計算して理論を組んでまた実験して、そのループの先にどんなもんが現れるのか、俺は見てみてえな。ワクワクしねえか、タクル。
Dad kept using the same voice he'd always used at home, but I wasn't hearing a word. The anger inside me just kept building.
とにかくよ、どんな時でも自分が面白いと思うことに従っとけ。これは父親代わりの人生訓ってやつだ。
父親だと？あんたなんか父親じゃない！
I screamed, but Dad kept smiling.
とにかくな、俺にとっちゃギガロマニアックス研究は最高だ。こんなに楽しいこと他に存在しねえ。これがお前の質問への答えだ。
そんな。
And that was the only reason? The only reason he worked for the committee? The only reason he'd done those horrible experiments in the basement?
ユイやノノや伊藤たちをあんな目に合わせたの、それだけのために。
だから何回言ったらわかんだよ。面白いだろ、その方が。
I think we get the picture here, crazy old man.
お前！
Yeah. The next thing I knew, I was running. The D-sword appeared in my hand instantly. It had no weight, but I could feel it was there. I listened to the blades roar as I ran down the corridor. It's fighting time. It's screaming time. And swung it upward at the bastard on the stage. There was a high-pitched noise and a brilliant light, and I stopped. My hand went numb for a second. The mechanical D-sword had blocked my swing. Dad's muscles bulged like thick ropes as he swung his giant D-sword down at me. It is always weird trying to, like, you know, witness a fight going on in a visual novel. I can never really, you know, sit through it. It's kind of weird. I barely managed to block it, but the impact knocked me back into the front row seats. There was a sharp pain in my arm. It had been cut a little. It was a delusion before, but this time real blood was streaming down my arm.
Oi, oi, お前の腕力で俺とチャンバラする気か?
That is a big-ass fucking sword. Dad didn't move a step. He raised his giant D-sword onto his shoulders. His huge body was at least 185 centimeters tall, and he towered over me from the stage like a wall.
ま、たまには息子と遊んでやるか。娘ばっかり相手にしてちゃかわいそうだしな。ほら、こっちに来いよ。観客がしたい一つってのは物足りないけどな。
Then he kicked Serika's unmoving body once more. I felt anger, but also an indescribable despair. What was I doing here? I'd come to find out the truth from Serika, but I'd killed her myself. There was no reason for me to be here anymore. So didn't that mean there was no reason to try and fight Dad? No, it wouldn't even be a fight. I'd probably just get myself killed. So maybe. When Serika had cut open my leg before, it had only been an illusion. I could run to the exit. If I caught him off guard, I could escape. Maybe. But... I went forward. I hadn't done any real exercise since my physical therapy 6 years ago. A vision of Nono and Yui flashed through my mind. And for some reason, I saw Sarika smiling, like she used to do when we were in the newspaper club.
どうした?早く舞台に上がれ。客が退屈してるぞ。
When I looked at him, I suddenly had an idea in the corner of my mind. I remembered what he'd said. That the machine on his back was what gave him his power. That he was an artificial gigalomaniac. Then what if I could get rid of that machine?
やれるかもしれない。いや、やるんだ。
It can't be that simple though, right? I stood and climbed up onto the stage. The lights shone down upon my head. I could hear a non-existent crowd screaming for my death from the empty seats. I readied the D-sword. My hands still felt a little numb.
おお、主役っぽいぞ、タクル。それでいい。
Hell yeah. We are the protagonist of this story after all. Or at least last I checked. I took a step to the side, trying to look as natural as possible.
あいつがあのままの姿勢でディソードを使うなら。
By moving to the side, I was able to see part of the device on his back. I hit him with my power as hard as I could. Dad heard a noise behind him and turned around. I had a clear view of the machine.
そこだ!
I concentrated harder and hit him with more of my power.
てめえ。
Dad howled like a wild animal and swung his D-sword. But I didn't stop. As long as I can destroy that machine. Excuse me? Oh no. My vision suddenly blurred. I felt a cold wind on my cheek, and I could see the city in the distance. Where was I?
学校の屋上?
More mind control. I panicked and tried to use my D-sword. It was gone. The D-sword had disappeared.
なんでだよ、ちくしょう!
I concentrated as best as I could. I imagined the pale light of the sword. Come on, come on! I couldn't see him or sense him. But Dad was probably right in front of me with his huge D-sword. But I couldn't make my D-sword appear. I couldn't see it. I couldn't find it. It was always supposed to appear when I imagined it.
何?のんちゃん、話って。
Oh no. Sarika was standing there on the roof. And so was...
白々しいわね。あなたなら聞かなくてもわかるんでしょ、セリカ。
It was Nono. Nono was standing in front of me talking.
生きてたののか?
Nono is...
いや、違う!
My sense of logic dispelled the hope that was forming in my mind. This was mind control. Dad's power was causing me to hallucinate. The two of them were right in front of me, but didn't seem to know I was there.
分かっていたんだな、クルスノノ。
ええ。
Suddenly, Serica changed. The smiling, happy girl from the newspaper club disappeared. She became a cold, remorseless killer.
やめろ。おのえ。
So how are we seeing an event that actually occurred? Like, this is pretty much bit by bit how it all went down. Was Sakuma actually, like, here? Was he ready to witness all of this? That's the only way I think, like, I could think of this actually working out. He can't reject a real-life situation for mind control if he wasn't there to witness it, right? I guess he could, you know, squeeze something together, create something himself, but this seems all too real. I felt a cold chill in my heart, and all the hairs on my body stood up on end.
Nara, こうなることも分かっていただろう。
Serica's D-sword appeared in her hand. Nono didn't seem surprised. She just glared at Serica. Stop it. Stop it, Serica.
タクルのことも殺すつもり？
それはない。あいつのことは私が生かし続ける。それが私の存在理由だ。
Sorry about that.
信じられないわ。だから私はあなたを止める。この命を使ってでも。
そう言うと思った。だからお前は邪魔なんだ。
やめろ!
I screamed at as Serica stepped forward, but there was no sign that she heard me. I tried to summon my D-sword, but it didn't work. I tried to get between the two of them. And I realized I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were frozen to the ground.
どうして?
But my head was clear. I couldn't let this happen. I knew I had to stop it, but... Serica and Nono's D-swords slammed into each other. There was a flash so bright I was forced to close my eyes. And Nono's D-sword cracked.
見込み違いだったな。お前の思考は丸見えだ。まだ私に友情を期待しているとはな。
Serica kept going forward. There was no hesitation on her face.
やめろ! やめろ!
No matter how much I screamed, they didn't hear me. I couldn't move. Serica crossed right in front of me, carrying her gigantic, deadly weapon. It is pretty goddamn big.
友情など存在しない。
God damn it, let me get a fucking drink. Sorry, I was actually partaking in said drink. And in the next moment...
タクル、ごめんね。
It felt like Nono looked at me. And then died. And then, Serica's D-sword ran through her. Yeah. Nice to revisit that lovely scene. And suddenly I was seeing something else. I felt a cold wind on my cheek and I could see the city in the distance. I could hear a sob. I'd been crying without realizing it. I looked around, forgetting even to wipe the tears from my cheeks. The roof was lit up by the moon. There was nothing here. There was no one here. Of course, there was no sign of Serica or Nono's body. Then what was that?
落ち着け。落ち着くんだ。
It was all mind control, all just a hallucination. It was a fake vision that my dad had created. That's right, it was just like a movie, it had to be. Nono died, at Serika's hand. Serika had killed Nono. That had really happened and I'd seen it. But it wasn't happening now. It was all part of the past, there was no changing it.
何のんちゃん、話って。
Bro, are we just gonna be on fucking repeat with this shit?
白々しいわね。あなたなら聞かなくてもわかるんでしょ、セリカ。
Bro, that's foul. Again, the two of them were standing there, just as they were before.
分かっていたんだな、クルスノノ。
ええ。
なら、こうなることも分かっていただろう。
タクルのことも殺すつもり。
You know, what's really interesting about this is that there's no music, like at all.
あいつのことは
Just ambient
私が生かし
noise.
続ける。それが私の存在理由だ。
信じられないわ。だから私はあなたを止める。この命を使ってでも。
そう言うと思った。だからお前は邪魔なんだ。
The two of them played out the exact same scene as before. There was still no sign that they'd noticed me. My heart began to pound loudly again. I remembered how it felt to hold Nono's body in my hands. The smell of her blood and the way the warmth drained from her body. And the way her eyes would never look at me again. Calm down. I tried to tell myself that again and again. This was part of the past. Screaming wouldn't change it.
いや、そうじゃない。
Maybe this wasn't even part of the past. I hadn't heard this conversation. Everything except the fact that Serika had killed Nono might be a hallucination that my dad had created. But their conversation is what we saw. I tried to run away, growing even more frustrated at my unmoving legs. But nothing worked. That's right, the real me wasn't even here. I was on top of the stage, trapped in a hallucination, with Dad and his gigantic D-sword standing right in front of me.
見込み違いだったな。お前の思考は丸見えだ。まだ私に友情を期待しているとはな。
Serika raised her D-sword and advanced. It was coming back. I never wanted to go through that again, but it was coming back. I looked away. No, I tried to look away. But my head wouldn't move. I couldn't take my eyes off it. Nono looked at me.
タクル、どうしてそこにいるの？
Okay, that's kind of creepy. Serika killed Nono again. And here we go for loop number 3. And then I found myself back at the beginning once more. That's so messed up. On the cold, moonlit roof. I wrapped my arms around my body tightly, trying to warm myself against the freezing air. What was that? Nono had looked at me. I had seen her looking at me, I was sure of it. She'd seen me? No, that was impossible. I wasn't really here. And that was Nono's voice I'd heard, and she had been looking at me. If I was a real gigalomaniac, did that mean I had the power to change the past? If that was true, Was that the real Kirisu? Not a hallucination?
落ち着け。落ち着くんだ。
Is, like, time manipulation an actual ability of gigalomaniacs? Like, I'm not entirely sure because obviously I haven't played through Chaos Head. I don't know what gigalomaniacs are truly capable of except for being a little bit more OP than psychics. But is that possible? I mean, we're in a hallucination. We need to, like, think a little bit clearer here. My head hurt and I was losing the ability to think. No. This was an illusion. It was all an illusion. There was no way I could change the past.
何のんちゃん、話って。白々しいわね。あなたなら聞かなくてもわかるんでしょ、セリカ。
Getting real tired of this song and dance. On my third time seeing the exact same thing, I finally closed my eyes. That was like a long pause. I didn't know if I should say anything. Stop it. I don't want to see Nono die anymore. I put my hands over my ears to block out the sound, but I could hear them speaking the same words. The last conversation Nono would ever have flowed directly into my head.
見込み違いだったな。お前の思考は丸見えだ。まだ私に友情を期待しているとはな。私の中に友情など存在しない。
I didn't have to look to know what was happening. I knew the expressions on their faces. I knew the looks in their eyes. The angle that Serica held her D-sword at. And even how she was going to swing it. I knew it all.
タクル、どうして助けてくれないの？
Aw, man. I felt warm blood splash on my face the second I closed my eyes. There was no time to even scream. This is messed up, dude. I kept my eyes closed tight, but I could feel the wind on my cheeks again. I was stuck frozen on that roof again. The muscles in my face had tensed up. There was nothing funny happening, but I was letting out a noise that sounded like laughter. My teeth were chattering.
何？のんちゃん、話って。白々しいわね。あなたなら聞かなくてもわかるんでしょ、セリカ。
I covered my ears, but their words went right into my brain. I didn't know how I could possibly be any more confused. What was that? Why was Nono in front of me?
なぜ答えてくれないの？
Is this like an acceptance deal? I didn't want to open my eyes. I wanted to keep them shut. But for some reason, the moment Nono was killed, they opened on their own. Nono kept dying in front of me. Nono had taken care of me and kept me safe before I'd even woken up from my coma. From my perspective, that was before I'd even known her. She was a part of my family. She was the only big sister I had. And she kept dying over and over.
なぜ私が死ななければならないの？
It's in the script, my man. My head hurt, but the pain didn't even work as an anchor to keep my mind connected to reality. This Nono was a hallucination, and I knew that. But the words she said were ripping apart my mind.
なぜユイを助けてくれなかったの？
I mean, there wasn't much we could do there.
なぜ事件を追いかけたりしたの？
I mean, we were gonna be involved anyways. Nono looked at me and kept asking. Were those her last words before she was killed? Her dying screams, her final message? No more. I don't want to see her die anymore. Please, stop it. My eyes were closed, but I could see her death repeated again and again in my mind. The D-sword running through her chest. The blood everywhere, the tiny sound coming out of her throat, like air leaking from a bag. Her blood was hot when it landed on my face. It didn't have that metallic smell, but it was hot. I couldn't tell anymore. Was this really a hallucination? Maybe this was the real Nono. And maybe this is what she'd really thought? Why didn't you save me? Why didn't you save Yui? Why did you try and solve the case at all? I told you not to do anything dangerous. I told you not to get revenge. Ah, come on, don't do that to us. Come on. Damn. I heard a sound somewhere. It was the sound of something snapping. I didn't want to see anymore. I didn't want to hear anymore. I didn't want to feel anymore. I closed off my mind, wanting nothing more than that.
おいおい、そこで殻に閉じこもるなよ。罪の意識だけで立ち止まるお前なんざ、もう見飽きてんだ。
I heard a voice from somewhere speaking directly into my head. But I held my hands over my ears anyway. I didn't want to hear anything.
しょうがねえな。なら、立ち止まれないようにするしかねえか。ウッドバーンヘロンは知ってるか？じゃあ、また1ヶ月後にな。楽しく壊れろよ。
Oh no. I don't know what that means, but I have an idea of what it could mean. And then, like a computer monitor being powered off, everything disappeared. What? What was this? It was dark. I couldn't see anything. I was in a huge, dark, empty space, like nothing I'd ever experienced. I couldn't even tell if my eyes were open or not. I tried blinking, but the darkness didn't change. And I tried to rub my eyes to see if that helped. But my hands wouldn't move. No, not just my hands. Nothing moved. Huh? There was no sensation of standing. There was no feeling of weight in my body. Was I lying down? No. Was I floating? It was like being in zero gravity, or floating in water with no resistance. Like my body was drifting along. The only thing that existed was the quiet. I could hear the sound of my heart echoing. But even in the overwhelming darkness, I felt a little better. Anything was better than seeing Nono die again and again. It didn't matter what. Compared to hearing Nono's last words over and over, I did nothing but float there. It was like being almost asleep, but there was something stopping me from falling asleep altogether. It felt weird and unpleasant. I tried to at least do something about the floating, but there was nothing to grab onto, nowhere to stand, and my body wouldn't move. I wanted something solid. I tried my best to find it. Suddenly I realized, where was I? What was I doing here? No. This was more mind control. This darkness was another hallucination. Sorry, I can't scream. I tried to scream and wave my arms, but there was no sound and no movement. If I couldn't move, I at least wanted to feel something with one of my senses. It could be a bright light, screaming, even pain. An awful bitter taste, or even a horrible smell. If I didn't find something fast, I'd lose track of where I ended and the darkness began. I know. What about my shoulder injury from when my dad had knocked me into the seats? I desperately tried to feel the pain in my shoulder, but it didn't work. I couldn't feel anything, even whether or not it was bleeding. It felt like the darkness was gradually burying me, like ants swarming on a piece of candy. The boundary line between my own body and the rest of the world got even blurrier. No way. I finally remembered a certain piece of information. I remembered what my dad had said just before this happened. Woodburn Heron, wasn't it? I matched the name with what was going on. That was a famous experiment, if I remembered right. Heron's sensory deprivation experiment. He put subjects in a sound-treated room that was completely silent, and then blindfolded them so they couldn't see. Then tied them up with a straitjacket, kept at exactly their body temperature to take away their sense of touch. Except for eating simple meals and defecating, they were kept on a bed at all times. The experiment he'd done was to see how long they could last. The results had been far less than what he'd expected. The most any of them could endure was 2 to 3 days. The worst ones would complain of disturbed thinking after only a few hours. If they continued with the experiment anyway, they would start hearing and seeing things and almost go mad. A human being can't endure long periods of time with no stress or stimulation. The experiment was banned now because of its dangerousness. I remembered something else, something terrifying. What had my dad said? See you in a month? I was supposed to spend a month like this. I screamed, but I couldn't hear my own voice. Okay, I think we got the picture there. The first change was to my sense of vision. It was after about 2 days had passed, by my reckoning. It would have been about dinner time. I wasn't sleepy or hungry. At some point, I just begun to count numbers. 1 second, 2 seconds. It was meaningless, but I felt like I'd go mad if I didn't do something. When I just about passed 100,000 seconds, the darkness in front of me suddenly began to shine. What? Who's there? It wasn't a camera flash or a light bulb. It was just a blurry glow. That was all. I couldn't see anything else or even move. When I saw it, I lost track of my number and started over. The light came every 100,000 seconds. A day was 60 times 60 times 24, so 86,400 seconds. Perfect. I decided to round up and call each 100,000 seconds a day. When there was no light, I was bored. I wished so many times for something to happen. Someone come here. Even Dad, I didn't care. I'd rather be fighting a battle with D-swords or that I knew I couldn't win. No, actually, I'd rather be stabbed with a D-sword. I wanted to feel pain. I thought that when the light came for the 30th time, I could escape. Because that would mean a month had passed. A month was 30 days. But nothing happened. The light just kept coming at the same pace as before. When the light came again after 30 days passed, I stopped counting how many times it had come. I stopped counting to 100,000 too. What's the point of counting anyway?
数えるのやめてしまうの?
No? I heard that clearly. I'd started hearing voices sometimes when I heard the 30th appearance of the light, or when I neared it. Are you just going to die like this? What's Miyashita Park like? Hey, Miyashiro. How do you know Gen? Adios, gracias. Why did you leave me to die? You idiot, are you just gonna die here? The newspaper club's just getting started, right? Tell me, why didn't you save me? It hurt so much when I died. You ever heard of Woodburn Heron? The voices came and disappeared without listening to my responses. I at least wanted to see their faces. I was already starting to forget what everyone looked like. Maybe if I saw them again, I could stop the darkness from swallowing up all my memories.
ここから出してあげる。父さんのこと殺してきてあげる。
Yeah, I'm sure that'll work out just fine. Really?
行ってきた。でもダメ。私一人じゃ無理だった。私たち手伝いましょうか?
Really? You'll do that for me?
女子高生の力をなめるなよ。アディオスグラッシャー。
Wait.
どうしたのタクル兄ちゃん。
No,
まさか一人じゃ寂しいとか言うんじゃないでしょうね。勘弁してよ。
that's not true. Of course I'm not lonely. No. I wanted to tell you to be careful. Dad's power is... What was it again?
どうした？佐久間はどこにいるんだよ。それがわかんねえと殺しに行けねえだろ。
さっさと言え。時間の無駄だ。
Huh? That's strange. He should be right there. Huh? There? Where's there?
タクルさん、ウッドバーンヘロンって知ってますか？
Don't you know I'm a right-sider? Of course I know. He's the guy who came up with the theory that a day is 86,400 seconds. Huh? Amazing, right? I was slowly breaking and melting away. Yeah, our information was, like, not right. Suddenly I felt something stabbing me somewhere. It was the pain I'd been longing for, but I didn't care anymore. I was just tired of it.
殺してあげる。
No, please don't stab me.
なぜ？
Because it makes weird noises. I don't want to die.
どうして？
Because it hurts.
痛みなんて感じてないじゃない。タクル、あなた、本当にそこにいるの？
Nono kept stabbing me as if she was trying to find out where I was. When that sound finally stopped, I heard a wet, sloppy noise. I could tell her hands were jammed inside my body. Excuse me. Rummaging through my guts, lovely. I could imagine the blood. But Nono was right, I didn't feel any pain. That's strange, it hurt a moment ago. Nono? Let me see you. I'm sorry, you can kill me if you want.
なぜ？
Because I want to see you. I want to see anybody. I'm lonely. Nono? Nono! Why? Why did you leave? No, wait. Was that really Nono? Was that Nono's voice? Did she really talk like that? Huh, wait a second. What was Nono's last name? That orphanage. I was blanking out on the place's name. There were two sisters there. What were their names? Or wait, was it a brother and sister? Everything was turning black. Who was that girl who always told me not to lie? Who was the one in the white lab coat? The one who didn't talk? The one who always seemed scared? Who'd been stabbing me a moment ago?
わからないの？ひどい先輩っすね。
Shut up, shut up! Suddenly the noises started to bother me. I didn't want to be criticized by the people when I didn't even know their names. Please, somebody kill. Ow. I was surprised by a sudden fierce pain in my head. Thud, thud. I could feel the blood flowing into my head. How many months had it been since I'd felt pain so clearly like this? No, how many years or maybe decades?
いつまでそんなことをしてるんですか？私の方がずっと痛かったんだけど。
I said shut up. All of you shut up. I screamed back at the voices. I don't know who you people are. All of you just disappear.
助けて。助けて。
Wonder who that is. When I said someone's name, everything became better. All the voices disappeared and the pain in my head was gone. All is well.
タク、大丈夫？ 怪我は、平気だね。
No, we're not. We're not good. We're not good at all. She was right next to me, as if that was the most natural place in the world for her to be.
お前、お前、なんでここに。
私はいつもタクの隣にいるよ。
That was impossible. When my dad used his mind control on me, I'd killed her.
そうだ。僕が。
I remembered. Dad had used his mind control on me. In the theater cube, a Hikariwo. So this was all just...
僕のただの妄想か。
昔みたいだね。
Sarika laughed. I didn't know why.
で、どう？
何が？
思考誘導、どんな感じ？
なかなかだよ。結構きつい。
そう？結構居心地良さそうだけど、お腹も空かないんでしょ？
Sarika looked around into the empty void. She was acting like she'd just come over to check out a friend's new house.
お前な、一度こうなってみろよ。体を動かせないのがどんなに辛いか。
そりゃ私は耐えられそうにないけど、タクはリハビリの時に経験済みじゃん。
あの時は動かそうとするたびにちゃんと痛みが走った。動いてなくても動かしてるっていう実感があったんだよ。
そういうもの？
Sarika tilted her head at me.
これ、向こうはどうなってる？
向こう？
現実だよ。つまりシアターキューブにいる僕だ。思考誘導を受けて多分倒れてるだろう。
I didn't even have the slightest idea how much time had passed. But it had to have been much longer than a day or two. The Restoration Festival was probably long since over, and I might have starved to death. Well, if we starved to death, we wouldn't be,
それはない
here.
んじゃないかな。だってタクちゃんと話してるし、生きてるってことでしょ？
そうだけど。
情報をまとめて理屈で考えろっていつも言ってるのはタクだよ。こっちと向こうの時間が違うとか？
That's right. That's possible.
ひなちゃんたちはどうしたの？
ひなちゃん。
Oh, right. Hinae. Harimura Hinae. Excuse me, how had I forgotten about her?
新庄さんたちと一緒に渋谷を抜け出したと思う。
たちって誰？ウキちゃんとゆうとくんと
久野里さん。
あれれ、はなちゃんは？
あいつは事件と直接関係ないから渋谷に残ってると思う。
そっか。
And then Sarika started asking me one question after another. Could I really not move? Was the light I sometimes saw a hallucination? Were the voices I heard imaginary? I took a long time answering each one in as much detail as possible. I had plenty of time after all. And just the act of having a conversation was wonderful. It was something I'd done all the time in my daily life and at the newspaper club. Come to think of it, who had first used the phrase, "You don't know what you've got till it's gone"? And when did they use it?
わかんないよ。ポケコン持ってくればよかったかな。
I laughed a little, though I wasn't sure if Sarika was serious or joking. Each time I would answer one of her questions, Sarika's expression would change. She'd laugh or get mad, and sometimes she'd even try to correct me. She really did seem like a normal person. But...
何？
お前、昔は僕の妄想でどこにもいなかったんだな。
バレちゃったか。
She acted just like a kid who had been caught while playing hide and seek.
他の人からはどう見えてたんだ？
If she wasn't real, I must have spent all my time as a kid talking to empty air.
どうって見たまんまだと思うけど。でもさ、私とタクが一緒にいるところなんてそんなに見られてないよ。タクの両親くらいじゃない？あと、病院の地下でセンリちゃんにか。あれは失敗したな。そのせいで私、のんちゃんにバレちゃったんだよね。
It's true, you know. That's right, Serica and I spent almost all of our time in my room. I'd never been to her house. No, according to Kunasato, her house didn't exist.
言ってくれればよかったのに。
そういうわけにはいかないよ。
She laughed, but she seemed a little bothered.
でも、あの時はどうだったんだ？渋谷地震。
ああ。
I remembered carrying Serica through the hell that was the post-earthquake Shibuya. But if she'd only just been born when I had that headache, when I was in the Yoyogi shelter, I hadn't been really carrying her on my back at all. Only then did I remember why I was here. It wasn't to talk about old times.
よくわかんないけど、でもちょっと変くらいにしか見えてなかったと思うよ。ほら、私は気を失ってたからあんまり話してないし。あんな状況じゃ、タクが独り言を言ってるとか、歩いてる姿勢がおかしいとか、別に誰も。タク？
え？
どうしたの？
いや。
If I could have moved my body, I would have been looking straight back into Serica's eyes.
お前を生み出した時、僕はお前に何を望んだんだろ
う。それはね、わかんないよ。
She didn't seem surprised or upset at all.
だって、今の私はタクの知ってることしか知らないもん。向こうの彼女しか知らないことだもん。
Yeah, that's right. The Serica in front of me might look alive, but she was really just a delusion of mine. So she wouldn't know anything that I didn't. I'd created her again to help me get through this torture. She was just... Oh. And when I realized it, I was disgusted with myself. I felt so pathetic that I wanted to cry. How could I be so shameless?
僕は向こうの尾上を殺したんだぞ。
Even if it was a trap created by Dad's mind control, I'd still killed her with my own hands. She'd almost killed me, and then I'd lost control and killed her instead. I'd torn open her stomach injury and then strangled her. Saying I'd been mind controlled was just an excuse. The rage and desire to kill her I'd felt had been real. Even without the mind control, if the same thing happened in reality, I'd do it again. I'd kill her.
だけど尾上は違った。
Even when the imaginary me tried to kill her, she'd chosen to die rather than resist, unlike me. But then I'd wish for her again, just like I'd done during the Shibuya earthquake. And I'd come to her for help again. I couldn't handle the darkness on my own, so I created her. I could not imagine a worse person than myself.
別に気にすることないよ。私、ここにいられて楽しいもん。
Enough. Stop it.
タクが呼んでくれなかったら話すこともできなかったし。
Don't tell me exactly what I want to hear. Come to think of it, Serica had always been like that ever since I was little. Even when I was neglected, she was always jealous of me. She always made me think that I was better off than she was. Whenever I wanted to show off some new piece of information I'd learned, she'd always act interested. She pretended to be a stupid girl so that I'd always get to think of myself as a right-sider.
ごめん。ごめんな。本当に。ごめん。
タク。
Serica looked hurt when she saw me apologize. Why don't you understand? You don't have to apologize. This is what makes me happy, she seemed to say. But she only looked that way because I wanted her to. My ego and desire had created the role of a kind-hearted young girl that she was forever forced to play. The two of us were like that for a little while. I kept apologizing and Serica seemed to not want to hear it. Eventually, she spoke to me like a mother scolding her child.
タクはね、それでも私を許しちゃいけないんだよ。
え？
私、のんちゃんを殺しちゃったんだから。そうでしょ？
でも、その理由が僕のせいかもしれないんだ。
No, it wasn't a maybe. There had to be something connected with me.
けど、私は死んじゃったから、聞くことはできないでしょ？
Mm-hmm. That is true. Serica was right. No, I was forcing her to be right.
じゃあさ。
Of course, I knew what she would say next. Serica's voice became a light. The one thing that lit up my path in this dark world.
タクは、どうしたいの？
Oh, damn, that actually kind of hurts. Suddenly, I saw a scene I remembered well. Until a moment ago, the blackness had kept me from remembering, no matter how hard I tried to imagine them. But now, I could see my family. They must have been getting ready for dinner. I smelled something good. I looked in the kitchen and saw a lineup of dishes fit for a nursing home. Yui, Uki, if you take cooking lessons from Nono, they're going to start calling you Mom and Granny at school. Yuto was in the corner, sulking because Yui had made fun of him. Yui was looking at him and laughing. Uki didn't know what to do. Nono gave Yui a brief scolding, but she was smiling while she did it. It was the same thing I'd seen a million times before. Nothing was different. Everyone was in the club room going over the case. We seemed to be talking about Shibuya news. Kunosato had updated some information. Kazuki was playing her game. Ito went to stop her, but froze when she offered him a piece of dried squid. Harimura told a stupid joke, and Ito blushed and started to shake his head frantically. There was still no expression on Kazuki's face. This was another scene I knew well. But this world was never coming back. Yeah. My dad had destroyed it.
それで、いいの？
Of course not. I loved my family, and I loved my friends. Those places were the most precious things I had. He'd ruined them all, and when I'd asked him why, the only reason he could give me was that it was fun. I couldn't let him get away with that. No matter what I did, Yui and Nono weren't coming back. The life I'd had with my friends was gone. My feelings began to break free from the darkness and come to life again. Blood flowed through my body once more, and my senses started to return to me. That's right,
敵を取らなきゃダメだ。
even if that meant breaking my promise to Nono. I didn't care what my dad was trying to accomplish with this experiment, or what was happening to me. He wanted something from me. What was it? I didn't even want to know.
それを知ろうとしなくて、いいの？
いい。
I didn't care. I refused to go crazy like he wanted.
なんか、タコらしくないね。
うるさいな。
でも、感情だけで頑張っちゃうタクも、ちょっと見てみたいな。
I smiled back at her, and then I focused all my neurons on creating a delusion. Where had I been? Who was I so angry at? And where were they standing? If I was in a prison of delusions created by that machine, then I'd have to come up with a delusion that was even more powerful. And then I'd pull him into my own delusion. The way I remembered it, it was like this.
もうちょっと明るくなかった？天井から照明当たってるんでしょ？
Were they?
多分これくらい。あと、もうちょっと近かった。
Closer, huh? How about this? Yeah, it's looking a little better.
オッケー。さすが、カメラいじってるだけあるね。
Serica walked around the stage, checking to see if there was anything I'd missed. She must have been satisfied because she nodded several times.
タクの立ち位置もオッケー？
意識が飛んだ時のままならな。
違ってたらどうするの？
その時はその時だ。確実な方法なんてありっこないんだからな。
Serica pretended to be impressed with what I'd said. I laughed at myself too. Was I really the type of person who was brave enough to do something like this? I used to think that risky decisions weren't courageous, but stupid. I used to think that courage was just a word people used to hide their stupidity.
あ、そうだ、タク？私の仇は取っちゃダメだよ。のんちゃんたちの仇は取らなきゃダメ。でも、私の仇はダメ。当たり前でしょ？
それは。
いいから、とにかくその瞬間、タクが思っていいのは、のんちゃんたちだけ。ね。
I'm sorry. And thanks. Those were the only words I could come up with. I didn't know what else I could say.
ほら、タク、ちゃんとしてよ。じゃないと、私が来た意味なくなっちゃうじゃん。
Serica pouted a little. It was the same thing she used to do in the newspaper club. I tried to stop my tears from welling up again.
ちゃんとしてるよ。この僕がちゃんとしてなかったことなんてあるか？
Yeah.
あの時と、あの時、それから。
指を折って数えるな。
She laughed. And then she looked right in my eyes.
多分、向こうへ戻った瞬間、その一瞬にしか、あいつの隙はないよ。だからチャンスは。
一度あれば十分だ。
Hopefully. If this will even work. That's right. I would only have a few seconds in the world of my delusion. And a few seconds when I got back to reality. I'd probably have less than 5 seconds in total. If he'd been researching psychics for as long as he said, he'd notice what I'd done immediately. So I'd only get one shot. If it didn't work, he'd kill me this time. Serica looked relieved when she saw my resolve. And then she smiled and started to fade away, as if her job was done. At the same time, I felt a stabbing pain in my head. It was the pain from when the D sword appeared. Here it comes.
無謀なことにかける覚悟は、オッケー？
オッケー。
掛け金が自分の命だっていう現実は、オッケー？
オッケー。
バカな決断に言い訳をしない意志は、オッケー？
オッケー。
Let's get it.
じゃあ行って！舞台に上がって！タク！
Oh shit, music. I slammed my own delusion down on top of the one that held me. It was like splattering bright paint on a black canvas. In a single instant, a perfect replica of the theater appeared. Yes, it was working! Dad was in front of me. He looked surprised. I could tell from the shock on his face that he hadn't yet realized that this was a world of delusions sitting atop another delusion, and that I dragged him inside. Alright, I hate to do this, but we are going to wrap up this episode because I am really out of time. And hopefully the next episode we can see how this fight concludes. But that took so much fucking time to get out of that void. Thank you all for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and I also really want to wrap this episode quick because I also want to keep on talking so I don't have to worry about the whole copyright claim deal that is bound to happen because of this. I really want to avoid that, especially in the next episode. I guess we'll see what happens. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this very interesting episode, and I'm excited to see how everything ends in the next one. Take it easy, guys.